What's going on, good people? Welcome to another edition of Build Your Fort with Lentheus Chaney. Today, my special guest is Mr. David McCullar. He is the co-founder of Inception, which is the first mental health gym. Now, if you've never heard of a mental health gym, we're here to talk about that, talk about the benefits that taking care of your body from the inside out can do for you as an entrepreneur, and it's just as an everyday person in general. So, David, thank you. I appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule to talk to me today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Anytime. I definitely want to let everybody know, full disclosure, I had the pleasure of going to Inception probably about a month ago, and I was in a process of just totally detoxing my life from all of the outside noise, and I needed a break. Did a little research, and up on Instagram pops up Inception. I actually saw a documentary on Vice regarding Inception and exactly what it does for you. So, can you tell me a little bit about your business and exactly what you do to help people?
Right. So when people think about mental health, we typically think about mind, we think about mental, we think about thought. But one thing that we don't think about is where mind, mental, thought ends up. That may be the originating source, but where does it end up when you have a thought or you have think about your mind or your mental capacity? So what happens is when you have a thought or you think about those things, it ends up in your body. Your body's going to respond to threat. And so our hardwired into us is the ability to protect ourselves at all time without our conscious participation. So when we've heard about the word stress as kids and adults, we never really knew about the stress. We knew about stress, but we didn't know about the response to stress, meaning that the brain and the body was going to activate outside of our conscious participation to protect us. But the issue is that's great. The brain and body protects us. The problem is when the brain and body is stuck in states of protection. It's trying to protect you even though the event may be long gone. Or it may be continue trying to protect you because you live in a chronic, stressful, or traumatic environment. So the brain is constantly trying to have to protect you. So when we get these terms like, I'm tired or I'm fatigued or I'm stressed out or I'm having a nervous breakdown or I'm having a midlife crisis. What are all those things even talking about? What it's talking about is your resources being used to a degree that you can no longer adapt. Because if you stay in those states of protection, your adrenaline, your cortisol, they're gonna spike. Blood is gonna be going to the limbs so that you can mobilize and run or fight, or immobilize when we talk about the freeze response. So when you have those components happening, you're burning through all your resources. So when you think about having the ability to focus and concentrate, or the ability to solve math problems, or the ability to rest and digest when it's time to go to sleep, that's what's happening. So at Inception, we use a wide range of tools to help the internal parts of you, the systems of the body, to find its way back to homeostasis and what you call parasympathetic rest and digest. And so when we talk about mental health, we're not just talking about it from the mind, we're talking about it from mind, body, and spirit.
That's a great explanation. I'm going to give a simplified explanation for those of you out there who are saying, what is this guy talking about? I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
give you a very simplified, and David, you keep me honest. My experience of it is like when your iPhone or your Android phone has so many windows open and there's so much information going through that phone, and it starts to get hot and it starts to get stressed out and it starts to slow down and it starts giving you gibberish, and eventually that iPhone or whatever it is device that you're using is just going to shut down and you got to reboot. So I
Mm-hmm.
looked at my experience with Inception was my own internal iPhone was so bombarded with outside noise and stresses and traumas that if I didn't take the opportunity to shut down and clear all that stuff out, I probably was going to shut down totally. Would you say that that's a fair analysis of that?
I think it is, and I think the other component is, and I like that technological analysis analogy because that's my background is information technology. So when we had computers back in the day, and you put Norton antivirus software on the computer, Norton would run in the background, and Norton would run in the background trying to find all these Trojan horses and potential viruses and threats. And what you would do is you go to Control Alt Delete, and that would bring up your task manager. When you did that and you looked at your resources, you would see your resources were used one, just like you just said. Let's say you got all these tabs open. Well, your resources are being used because you have a certain amount of tabs open that you're trying to process. But when we would look at Norton, we would see that Norton was using majority of the resources using trying to fight, defend against threat. So I would say, yeah, that's a good one. It's two. We live in a society now where we're not just overwhelmed from the stressors of again day to day, whatever's going on in our lives. We're stressed out just from the amount of stimulus. So stimulus is we're being overdriven by stimulus as well. So yes, being able to close out those windows and being able to get the defense mechanism to shut down. And I don't want to say shut down because it's not like it shut down completely, but there's a better balance and flow to it. So when you think about 600,000 people die a year from heart attacks, like what is that from? Well, if your foot is on the gas, if you think about your nervous system, sympathetic, and your foot being on the gas, like being like that all the time, you're burning through. I mean, we talked about the heart, increasing, the heart rate increasing, blood pressure increasing. So if you stay in those elevated states of sympathetic, now you get the again strokes and you get heart attacks. So that's what it is to be stressed out. And so, well, like you said, what you did was really get everything to calm down and reset itself.
So we're going to get into a little bit about what some of those therapies are. What I'd like to know from you is being someone, which is funny, is we both have some of the similar background in technology, and so we can talk jargon easily and understand how it relates to the body. But my question for you is, coming from a world of technology, how is it that you were able to transition into this type of work? What led you here?
I was already in the field of self help and self development. I read a lot of books on, all these books come out, and Anthony Robbins was one of the biggest people that I listened to, like in my early 20s. But before that, I was just in the church and in spirituality. I mean, if you go read biblically or other sacred texts as well, you start seeing it's the same thing. It's saying the same thing, just on different layers and levels, So when I'm in the church and I'm seeing these issues still happening for people, I'm like, well, it can't be spiritual because everybody in here is spiritual. Well, why are these people still suffering? Well, they're suffering because we're not actually taking care of the vessel, the actual physical vessel. You may be a spiritual being having a temporary human experience, but the fact is you are having a human experience. You do live in a body. And so for me, I end up having anxiety and panic attacks, and it didn't just come out of the blue. It built over a lifetime. It built from being young and maybe experiencing micro stressors and traumas. Because we all going to deal with that. But I didn't know how to regulate. And so in my mid 20s, I started having panic attacks and, like I said, anxiety and insomnia. So I just went down the path, like you said, in terms of being someone in the tech field. I mean, we're going to troubleshoot some stuff, right? We're going to try to fix, what the issue is, and that's what I did for myself. I went down that road of trying to troubleshoot myself, and I did. I found one of my first technologies that really helped me, which is called neurofeedback, aka brainwave optimization. This was the first technology that I used, and my anxiety had decreased by over 50% in 3 sessions, which was really, I did that in one day. And so pharmacology, that's unheard of to have that shift. So from there, I knew that one, that I was going to be able to continue to help myself. But me and my dad, we brought that technology back to Michigan and opened our first company, which was called Neuro Fitness Center, which is really the father of Inception.
Good stuff. Do you see in Michigan where you now have Inception, what would you say the ratio of African American to non African American clients that come through your doors seeking help?
In the beginning, it was 98%, 99. I would say 99%. Not us, white people. And when I did get a black person, they would look at me like, "What are you doing here?" And I would look at them like, "What you doing here?" Like, because it was unheard of for us to seek these things out. And I was just happy to find someone because I thought, well, I got to be a weird person because there's nobody in our culture, remotely doing anything like this. But now, fast forward, I'm going on 15 years on totality of doing everything. I mean, right now it's the total opposite. I say 99% of the people coming through the door are black people.
Would you say that some people are using this as a first step to therapy? And is it opening them up to going ahead and getting therapy because there's such a stigma in the black community when it comes to actually going to talk to someone about your mental health?
I like what Charlemagne said about Inception, which is very true. He said Inception is the gateway for people to, explore greater depths of their mental wellness or their mental health. And it is because when you come through, we don't think that we're the first, or we don't think we're the last. We're just a piece. But as you come in and you get this, a big piece, I find is a big piece of it. But we also continue to educate and send you to different places. You may need to go have a talk therapist. You may, again, I've used over 60 different healing modalities in the last 15 years. So I don't think that there's just one thing. I mean, you may literally, people wouldn't understand, you have to go get your colon cleansed. Like if you're backed up, anytime you have issue with flow in your body, you have an issue. If you have too much flow, you have an issue. If you don't have enough flow, you have an issue. If you have too much, blood pressure, you have an issue. High blood pressure. If you don't have enough blood pressure, you have an issue. What is that called? You have blood clotting. So it's all about flow, and all of those things affect you mentally, emotionally. We wouldn't think about it in that way, but it does. So Inception really is there's a place that it's the gateway, and it helps you explore all those different aspects of not just mental emotional health, but physical health as well, because they're all
So
one.
I'm trying to dismiss some of the misnomers that are out there in the community that just because you go to Inception doesn't mean that you come from a background that was, you know, traumatized. Everybody has trauma at some point. But it doesn't mean that you come from an abusive household or anything like that. I mean, you don't have to
Mm.
have something that extreme happen to you in your childhood or your young years for you to be able to seek out
Mm.
help. Um, Speak a little bit on that and just the importance of what I call coming in and just getting a tune up is.
Yeah. We have to have a different understanding of what trauma is. Trauma is anything that's happening too fast, too soon, too sudden. Imagine being in a car and somebody's going 70 miles an hour and they slammed on the brakes. Trauma. That's trauma. Imagine riding down the street as a kid and you falling off your bike. That could be traumatic to you. I had a great childhood. I think, I don't know if you met my mother, but my
I
mother and
did.
my father are both in my life. They've always been in my life. Um, and I consider them to be great parents. I grew up in the inner city of Detroit, and it wasn't some rough neighborhood. There were some traumas and stressors in the neighborhood, but very little. So if I experience having panic attacks and all these different things as I got older. And I had a quote unquote great childhood, and both parents in the household. It's not about having a horrific, what we consider something horrific, happen to you. And literally, I remember one of my first traumas was being taken to preschool and being dropped out going to preschool. I mean, can you imagine as what your brain is saying? Like you're going and your parents take you to this place and they just drop you off and you're like, what's going on? Like logically, the parent knows, oh yeah, they're gonna watch you. But as a kid and as your brain doesn't your brain doesn't understand that in that way. So you don't have to have these again, like, oh, you were molested or you were raped. And even though a lot of people have experienced that. So to me, you can have a great childhood or a horrible childhood and it still can benefit you. Too, and we work with a lot of athletes as well. It's about peak performance. That's how I look at it as well too. Mental health is peak performance. If you want to get better at life, take a look at your mind, take a look at your body, and you're going to find ways that you can improve.
And what's great is that you were able to enter into this business with your dad. You know, you
Mhm.
went into business with somebody who you trust all out, and that's got to be a good feeling. So, a testament to the fact that you're in a business, family business at this point, and you didn't come from a horrific background, but you're doing something to help yourself and help other people. You know, what was that transition like for you from corporate America to doing this full time?
It was easy for me because I was groomed at a young age. I mean, my dad he had a landscaping company, and I was probably about 7 years old. I'm out there trying to push the broom with him, you know. And the company was called Art and Son Lawn Service. That's my dad, and so my name was on it, the son, right?
Right.
And so I had been out there, and by the time I was 16, I was managing his his uh his company, you know, in high school. And so I always knew that, you know, and since I was 10, my dad asked me, you know, what did I want to be when I grew up? And I said, I didn't want people telling me what I could do. And he said, well, you want to be an entrepreneur. I said, well, that's what I want to be. So literally when I was in corporate America, every place I went, I just told him, I said, don't look for me to be here too long. I'm just passing through. I was just looking for, you know, what is going to be the thing that's going to, the vehicle that's going to take me to where I need to go. And so it's great that when I saw, you know, this first technology and I learned that I could go out there and make a business out of it and help people. And I was, again, tech background, helping people. That right there lit me up. I was like, this is an awesome business. Now I will say it's a very tough business. It's not like you know, you sell hamburgers, you know, hamburger tastes good or it doesn't taste good, or cupcakes taste good or it doesn't taste good. I had to sit here and explain to you quite a few different things just for people to understand why to even come into Inception. You know, so that took, and it is taking. I mean, we're talking about 15 years of educating and working with people. But if we really truly knew, you know, what it is that I'm talking about, there would be lines at Inception. There's going to be a line out the door because people will understand that you're already taking care of your mental, emotional health. You just don't know that you're just not doing a great job of it. You're going to drink, you're going to smoke, you're going to sex, you're going to buy. Those are all ways of trying to do it, and not just do it once. I'm talking about a consistent. You know, when you consistently use these things to try to cope, and you still can find no balance. So again, for me, it was an easy transition. I was looking to get out of that corporate America. You know, I think that was one of my biggest traumas to begin with in the first place is people telling me what I could and couldn't do. You got to take this lunch at this time. You got to be back at this time. That's traumatic to me. You know, you got to take a vacation at this time. Like I didn't like that at all.
I 100% agree with that, friend. So, I'm going to talk a little bit about my experience Inception and some of the therapies I went through, and I want you to explain what the benefits are of those therapies. So, first of all, Great customer service. When I walked through the door, I was greeted. Your staff took very good care of me, and they walked me through each and every one of the different pods that I was going to go into that day. So the first thing I did was it was kind of like a sauna infrared near heat. And I may be
Mm.
having the terminology wrong, but that was the first one. If you could correct me as to exactly what it's called and what the benefits are.
Yeah, so it's called a infrared sauna, and it's much different than your traditional saunas where it heats the air out around you, and so you start to sweat pretty much from the outside. Infrared saunas they go deeper because the wavelength of the frequency that you're getting hit with in an infrared sauna is penetrating deeper into the cells of the body and the tissues. So you're able to purge and detox more efficiently and effectively. We're talking about molds, mercuries, mildews, and we typically start with the detox circuit because if you're backed up on that level, then mentally, emotionally going to the next. I mean, starting with the next circuit is not going to be as powerful. So we start off with doing more of a detox, and it's not that we're detoxing you; we're just supporting the body and its ability to detox.
Gotcha. So from there, again, facility is absolutely amazing. I took a shower, got dressed, and then I was led to the lymphatic therapy, which I
Mm.
remember doing this once. The one and only time that I had the nerve to run a half marathon.
Mm.
I can remember having this type of therapy just to get the circulation running in my joints again. But it wasn't as intense as this was. This was really nice, actually. But I remember being put in this type of I had when I explain it to people, I say it's like going to get your blood pressure checked, but it's in the lower
Mm. Right.
extremities, and you're stepping into these kind of boot like things, and you're zipped up, and then um, it
Hmm.
fills up with air and it releases, and you're listening to pleasant music, and your eyes are covered, and you're having a good time. And um, tell me a little bit about lymphatic therapy and why it's important, and what does it do for you?
Well, your lymphatic system is very important, and they don't actually spend a lot of time in school teaching this to the medical field, and it's probably it was really up there in terms of importance to your health because your lymphatic system is basically like your liquid trash can. So it's picking up all the debris and all the toxins and all the bacterias, and it's purifying those things. So we have three times more lymph fluid in our body than we do blood. So when you're congested, most of us we're putting a lot of toxic products on our bodies on a day-to-day basis. And so our lymph system has to work even harder. And then we become sedentary where we're not moving. So now, again, the lymph system is overwhelmed because of the amount of toxins and toxicity that's in the environment that has to purify, and also that we're not moving because that's the way that the lymph moves is through movement. So using the lymphatic suit is helping to get that lymph moving on your behalf in a much more efficient and effective way.
So then after that pleasant experience, I had what you call salt therapy. So imagine something for those of you listening, um, something that's kind of like outer space to me. I was put in
Mm.
a I don't know what it's made of, but it's like a glass box or a plexiglass box, and
Mm.
um, oxygen, is it, or in salt air or solution? What is?
It's a aerosol. It's like an aerosol mist because it's pharmaceutical grade salt that's crushed into microparticles. So what happens while you're sitting in a chamber is you're breathing in those microparticles. That salt one is antibacterial, antifungal. So when you breathe in those particles, it's going in and attaching to those fungus or bacterial things in the lungs, nasal pathway. Obviously, we know that COVID is a virus that attacks the lungs and goes through the nose. That's why they take the swab through the nose. So imagine salt going in and binding to that virus and basically killing that. I'm not saying that salt therapy is a COVID remedy, but in terms of overall, again, when we look at all of our services, they're just supportive of your system already. And that's something that salt therapy does too, is it just supports the system and helping to cleanse out, bronchial pathways as well. So people who have like asthma, is really beneficial for them. And two, just, even if you don't have a pathology, it's still helpful.
So that was my day one. That was a Tuesday. And um, if any of you out there happen to take a look at the Inception website, you will see that they offer the inner reset. They also offer a boot camp, and that was part of my boot camp, my 4-day boot camp, and that was Tuesday. But then came Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, and I did the following therapies. And if I'm not mistaken, when I got there, the first thing I did was uh, electromagnetic therapy.
Yep, the
Okay.
Magnetosphere. So the Magnetosphere is a molecular resonance therapy. So the Earth has a frequency to it, which is called the Schumann resonance. And so with the Magnetosphere from Dr. Larry Jerry Jacobson, he figured out the magnetic profiles of our bodies. And the magnetic profiles of our bodies, and not just talking about the whole physical body, but just internal organs, cells, tissues. He figured out that that every cell is supposed to have a specific voltage range. Again, not just cell, but ligament, tissue, bone. So he figured out those profiles as well, and they're like 10 million times lower than the Earth's magnetic resonance. So the magnetosphere is actually helping those aspects of the body recharge in a sense. But it's doing that one thing, but it's also doing something very important where it's helping the body to move out of the sympathetic overdrive that I was talking about earlier, the stress response, to go into rest and digest parasympathetic. So you do that first, and that's kind of like a primer to the next two
Oh,
therapies.
gotcha. Very relaxing, guys. So the experience for me was again dark room with lots of cool lighting and zero gravity chair, amazing music coming through your headphones. Your eyes are covered. You're at total rest, and you're just letting go. Now it may seem strange the first time you do it, but what I did notice after day two, day three, and day four that it became something that I craved, that good feeling of being able to totally relax and be disconnected from all of the outside noise and my phone and things of that sort and work. So from that room, we went across the hall and we did brain training. And I know you've got a nice big
Mm.
word for exactly what it is. Uh, Tell us about the brain training and what that does for you.
So that's how I started. And that's called neurofeedback, the technical term. And neurofeedback, that I consider that to have saved my life in a sense. And again, that was our first technology me and my dad started off with. We started off with one unit of brain training. That's all we had. We didn't have anything else that you experienced. And so what that does is I have a soft spot for brain training. So when people ask me what's your favorite, even though I don't typically like to say what's my favorite, what's my go-to tool that I'm gonna use is brain training. So brain training is helping the brain and the body become self-aware. Because again, when we're in these states of stress and trauma within our nervous system, it's outside of our conscious participation. And if we try to alter that, typically we have a hard time because we're so stuck in those patterns. So what the brain training does is you place sensors on the scalp that are read only. It captures the brainwave activity. It's not electroshock therapy. We're not shocking you, you know. So what it does is it's capturing that information, sending it to the computer. The computer is calculating and sending it information back to the brain in real time. So you're listening to music through a pair of headphones and you hear skips, pauses, and interrupts within the music. And every time you hear a skip, every time you hear a pause, every time you hear an interrupt, That's the information to your brain and your nervous system, letting it know that it made a shift. And that shift typically is that shift outside of the present moment into one of these states that we're talking about, these stress response states. And the reason why that's important is because in quantum physics, the whole theory is one of the theories is whatever is observed changes. And that doesn't have to sound too technical, but if you think about it, when you go in front of a mirror and you see something on your face and it's something incorrect, what do? Since you observed yourself, you go about trying to change it, right? What is that on my face? What is going on, right? So when a brain can observe itself in real time, the brain can make its own changes as well. And so when the brain makes its own changes, you typically find a deep sense of relaxation because again, now the brain has shifted and moved out of fight, flight, freeze response more into the present moment. The nervous system has more regulated
I
itself.
found that there to be very fascinating. My first day, um, I don't know if this is correct or not, or if I was imagining this, but again, zero gravity chair, nice music. I didn't know what the skipping was at first, but I found myself going into somewhat of a dream state, and I started remembering things from the past, and
Mm,
my memories from things from childhood began to be a little more vivid. That first day of doing the brain training, lots of skips. I was like,
right.
why is this thing? What's wrong with me? I think I'm broke. But I will say that by the final day, it didn't skip as much as it did the second day. And I don't know what the theory is behind that. You don't really have to explain it, but I just
mm,
found it fascinating that um, felt better, for lack of a better
mm,
word.
yeah.
So the final therapy of that day was float, and never thought I would do anything like that. But floating in total darkness, total silence, total sensory deprivation. First day was unnerving. It really was.
Yeah.
It was something that I was never used to before, never done before. But all you are is guys. So when you get there and they take you to this room, and you take a shower and you float in uh, a tub of magnesium and salt solution. Is that correct?
Yep. It's Epsom salt, so magnesium sulfate. It's 1,000 pounds of Epsom salt.
So that helps give your body buoyancy in the water, and the
Yep.
magnesium that's absorbed through the body as well. That's helpful for you. Is that correct?
Absolutely, because 80% of Americans is upward to 80% are magnesium deficient, and so your skin is able to absorb magnesium transdermally, and so yeah, the floating could be definitely unnerving. I know my first time I had a mini anxiety episode because when you go from an environment that's so fast paced, your internal body is revved up. So when you get into this environment where it's like literally a lack of sensory, you are so aware of how revved up you are. And that's what becomes jarring. You really get to see how fast on the inside and how uncomfortable you truly are internally. And after a while though, we say, I tell people really it's 3 floats. You have to do 3 floats before you can really even make a judgment about floating because it takes time for your body to begin to adjust to the zero gravity environment and the lack of sensory environment. A lot of people who have a lot of unresolved mental chatter, you hear it. It like spikes. All the illogical, irrational fears that you have, those things are like on a PA. Somebody got a bullhorn in your ear, like because it revs up because again, it's really sensory deceleration. It's like again the foot on the brake. So you went to this environment and you put on your foot on the brake that fast, or that's why we prime you with the other two services before you even get to that.
It's like taking your phone away and you have no control, and all you have to do, you are
Yeah.
forced to be in darkness. I mean, you could turn a light on, but it's better if you turn the the little light off, and you're forced to be in darkness
Mm.
and silence, and you let your brain rest. You let your body rest. And like I said, that first day I struggled. I'm like, okay. But by day three, I was yearning for it. I was like, okay, yay, it's time for us to go do
Mm.
float, you know? I mean, I'm at the
Right.
house trying to figure out how to float in this bathtub. It's it's not quite the
Yeah.
same, but it was definitely
Right.
therapeutic and something that I totally enjoyed. So after I did all that, David, I came home, and I think I explained this to you um, when you came down for InvestFest, that I
Hmm.
was so in tune with all of the microaggressions and the noise. It was so in tune with it that I could see it immediately, and I'm like, what's wrong with these people? You know, I thought that, I said, I'm good. I mean, something wrong with y'all. But it's very
Mm.
evident that we as a society are so revved up and we're in such a rush that when somebody who has released a lot of that, not all of it, but has released a lot of that, and you're thrown back into that environment, you just pick up on it so easily and you're like, oh, wow, this was me. This is what I was like. And
Yeah.
it really held a mirror up to me that, dude, you got to slow down.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, during the pandemic, I call that a virtual float tank. Now Atlanta was different because Atlanta didn't slow down like we did. Atlanta just kept kept jumping. But Michigan, we were on lockdown, and Lentheus, I loved it.
I can imagine.
I I haven't had that level of slow pace. I felt like I was a kid again on summer school. You know, not summer school, but like summer break when you didn't have to go. You just everything is fun at that point, and it just after we got through the initial moments of it, which we didn't know what was going on, but after a while, again, it's like that jarring feeling. Everything stopped, but after a while, it's like I didn't know I had the space to even sit down because I used to play video games with my dad. That's like one of our things, and I had got back to it with him and before I couldn't do it because I was so revved up with just even my business. And even though I was revved up, I was probably revved up at a different pace than everybody else because I use my own tools. But there's still a
Yeah,
level of revved up. I'm still an entrepreneur, I'm just maybe mitigating things. But that took me to another level of stillness. And, I said to myself one day, I was like, man, I wish we can do like a 90-day just like period like that where you just don't have to do anything. Like I wish we can go back into lockdown or something like that. And it's funny when you start to really do the work, you get in tune with yourself. And myself said to myself, why would you wait? Build it yourself. Create your own environment like that. So I thought about that, like, yeah, I'm not gonna have to wait till something outside of me to give me the ability to do something like that. So I'm sure I'll be able to, and I can start where I am. Maybe do 3 days. I thought about the other day, maybe I can do a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday and not look at anything. And as an entrepreneur, you got Saturday and Sunday. So if you do that same thing we used to do at work, take that Friday and that Monday off and you got a whole four
yeah,
day weekend, right? So we have to build rest and recovery within our lifestyle. We can't wait till we're like I was broken, having panic attacks and strokes, and then people having heart attacks. You can't. It's too late at that point. Sometimes it's too late, but we have to build this into it. And I think that's what Inception is. It's a lifestyle brand, and hopefully it's not just people can come in and like yourself experience it, but go home and say, you know what, maybe I need to change some things up for I can keep what I obtained when I was there. And what you obtained is something internal, not external. It's the internal.
100%. So, Dave, I first of all thank you again for taking the time, speak with my audience, let people know more about Inception. As you already know, I'm a hardcore Inception um, unofficial ambassador. I didn't know you before I got there. I had the pleasure of meeting you on the final day, and again had the pleasure of you hanging out with me in Atlanta, and that was priceless. So thank you again for that. I want you to give us some final words to all of these entrepreneurs, these business owners, and even corporate America people who are out here in this rat race trying to make it happen, trying to get the dollar, trying to hustle and get to the next level. Because my Instagram feed shows me a whole bunch of entrepreneurs out there that are not taking Saturday and Sunday. They own it, and they own it all the time. What do they need to do to start taking care of themselves so that they don't burn out?
One, you need to have the awareness that the ability to sharpen the saw is greater than being out there with a dull saw trying to cut the tree down. So this idea of, glorifying hustle and grind with things that are grinded down are really being broken when you grind things. You have to recover. And athletes only have so many runs, jumps, and skips in them for a reason. If you keep jumping on the same left leg, like I have in my life, I tore my Achilles after a while because I used it so much. So the more you use something and you don't replenish it, you will break down. So as an entrepreneur, you have to understand what's more important. What's more important is the body that you live in is actually giving you the life that you're seeking. It's giving the feeling that you're seeking. So if you spend more time putting emphasis on that and focus on taking care and supporting the body that you live in, everything else will be added to you. It may not be in a way that you want it to be, but it's the way that's really helpful and resourceful. So taking the time to, one, have the awareness of what you're doing, and then getting proper sleep. One, a lot of people sleep with the TV on. Turn the TV off. Again, stimulus, right? We can't get out of the stimulus mode. We got to have some stimulus. We constantly have to chew on something. So turn the TV off. Go to bed earlier. Take magnesium. You're burning through magnesium. Take magnesium. Take your shoes off and put your feet on the bare foot of the earth. Called grounding. Get back grounded. It's over 26 peer-reviewed studies showing you the efficacy of grounding. So when you start to do these micro things, you're going to see some shifts start to take place in your life. But again, you have to take care of yourself from the inside out, because that's really what the inner wealth is.
If you weren't doing this work, which I've asked you this before and I'll ask you again, this is your passion, this is your purpose. Would you say that's true?
Absolutely.
And if you weren't doing this work, what could you imagine that you would be doing?
That's an interesting question. What would I be doing? I would be doing the same thing I'm doing now. I would be creating something. I would create something that's adding value in some way. So whether that's, I'm in a dance scene, so I do salsa and bachata, create dance moves, create art, I'm heavily into interior design. So when I stayed at your Airbnb, I loved your space and how you had it set up. So I would have been an architect maybe. It's a lot of different things. A teacher. I love teaching. So just creating and adding value. So those are the two things I would continue to do, no matter if I wasn't in doing what I'm doing now.
And so you still dream. And ladies and gentlemen, when I got home from Inception, my dreams were more vivid. And there's nothing like having good, vivid dreams. Thank you for that, David. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
You work hard all year long, so why not get more for your money at Experamax Midtown Atlanta? Looking for a MacBook Pro, iMac, or iPad? Don't pay full retail prices at the Apple Store when you can get the same quality products without the premium price. Experamax in Midtown Atlanta is your Apple headquarters, with everything from Apple desktops to laptops, watches, accessories, and more. Get the peace of mind you deserve and buy with confidence, knowing that all of Experimac's certified pre-owned products are put through rigorous testing to make sure they deliver the reliability and dependability you demand. Experimax Midtown Atlanta makes it easy and affordable. Plus, you can trade in your old devices and get an offer right on the spot. So shop smarter and save money only at Experimax Midtown Atlanta.